Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we're going to do something a little bit different because I've been thinking about something since pretty much October 2021. You see, Games Workshop back then released a old world update for the lands of the Border Princes, and that made me think because there's a lot of different things there, new shields and iconography which were never there in Warhammer Fantasy. So today I want to discuss that, as I think that this could have some big changes to the future of Old World, possibly Total War Warhammer 3, and maybe in a sense get rid of an iconic faction? Well, maybe, but let's just go in and we're going to speculate quite heavily, so let's not waste any more time and jump right in. So what feels like 84 years ago, Games Workshop released a old world update which focused around the lands of the Border Princes. This is what's on screen right now, and interestingly enough, it just kinda carries on with the old lore of the Border Princes. It's not its own kingdom or culture or country, but rather a mixture of different sub-kingdoms which have their own culture. There are a few things to note here, mostly the fact that there are so many different types of heraldry, with each of them focusing around different parts of the Warhammer Fantasy world. If we look at the stuff just focusing on the actual Border Princes itself, we can see Imperial stuff, we can see Kislevite stuff, we can see Bretonnian stuff, and a few other cultures which now have their own heraldry. An important thing to note is that the heraldry here is not going to be the same as Total War Warhammer, but we can link them up, as one is obviously for the vampire counts, one is obviously for Kislev and all that. It's just they've always had different types of heraldry anyway. Now, if we look at the specific part of the Border Princes, well, there are a few different bits of heraldry which are completely new to us, and it seems that they are kind of linked up to different races and factions that we already have in the Warhammer Fantasy world, but might have never had a army book. That's the best way to explain it, because this all kind of forms in part of what used to be the Dogs of War. The Dogs of War were a faction in Warhammer Fantasy 5th edition, which was a mixture of different cultures and races to kind of introduce everything, but as you know, we never got army books in the future, but we never got Dogs of War stuff too. The main focus of the army book itself was pretty much a mixture, but also had units and characters from ARABY, TILEA, and ESTALLIA. These are different countries that we know are fully established in lore, just never had army books and, well, had very little lore to be in fact. There were rumors that it was always planned to eventually have more different races and factions in Warhammer Fantasy as playable factions on the tabletop, but, you know, with the world blowing up and the fact that Games Workshop released updates at such a slow pace, I mean, we were just never going to really realistically see them. Now, it could be that when it comes to Old World, they're trying to go back to all the plans that they had and think, well, maybe this could work out quite well, and maybe we can start selling more miniatures. Because, yeah, look, a lot of Old World stuff is going to go centered towards the Old Guard, and a lot of them still have their miniatures and so on, so they want new fancy factions, new fancy miniatures. This is going to kind of help. Plus, we know that's not out of the question, considering that Cathay was confirmed, though, mind you, we kind of expected it at this point anyway, and there is mounting evidence towards Kuresh and Int for Total War Warhammer 3, so likely we'll probably see races for that too. So out of all the different types of heraldry that we can see here, most of them are Bretonnian, Imperial. There's two different types of Imperial because there's a civil war going on and all that, Bretonnian and Vampire count, but there are some new ones. The first being Ortegeta, which is a larger shield with a castle. It's got a sun and a moon. The next being Gordono, which is a rather interesting heraldry there, and obviously the shield type is very, very different, so that kind of makes it stand out. And the last one seems to be Akelena. Now, again, you can see they're very drastically different from all the others, and what this makes me feel is that these are different factions. Obviously, something being so drastically different kind of makes that stand out. The Giordano one kind of gives me feels of TILEA because, well, the heraldry is very Renaissance style, and we've always kind of known that the Tilean faction, or just the lore in general, kind of focused around a Renaissance Italy feel. There was a little bit of Roman influences, but if memory serves, that pretty much just stayed to one city-state. But this does look very different, and it does look like something kind of Tilean. Aquilena could be something in regards to, say, ESTALLIA maybe, because it kind of has a really interesting shield. I mean, I don't know, that could easily be SARTOSA too, considering that it's got a sea snake and, you know, SARTOSA is a city of pirates, but I don't think that we'll get a SARTOSA faction, as it's not really an established country. It's more like Marienburg, say, for example, though Marienburg at this point in the timeline was its own established kingdom. If we look further down, there is Don Alba, which is very similar to one of the Imperials, but the shield is a bit different, the design is very slightly different, and that could easily be ESTALLIA too. Keep in mind that anything within the lands of the Border Princes doesn't fall in their respective country, it's just they're being led by, say, an Estallian, an Imperial, a Kislevites, and so on. They're disgraced leaders who are forming their own sub-kingdoms. Ortegeta's design kinda gives me Araby vibes, I'm not too sure why. I know the moon thing is very common in Arabic culture, so it could be that. I could be wrong though, so if you know anything better about that type of stuff, it's more common, but like there are some flags with the moon on it, the crescent moon itself, so this is why I'm kind of thinking that. So I'm getting pretty heavy vibes of ESTALLIA, TILEA, now maybe SARTOSA and Araby, possibly as their own respective factions. It's not out of the question. Keep in mind that it's possible. I mean, there's been a lot of hints towards Warhammer 3, and Old World, they need to make money, they want to milk as much as possible. This is a good way, because humans are kind of easy for them to design. However, keep in mind one specific thing. One thing that Games Workshop like to do many times is the whole door ajar aspect. This is something that comes up in a lot of conversations, where stuff will get changed a little bit, possibly a little bit established, but nothing comes out from it in case maybe they want to do it or they just don't have plans for it in the future. It's one of these really weird things. This is why Age of Sigmar, even Warhammer 40,000, 30,000, Warhammer Fantasy, and even some other games just bring in some little hints and then nothing really comes about it. But I do think that this is something that they'll want to do in an effort to just bring in different factions and be able to have more fleshed out areas, because I mean, I wouldn't have gone for this ages ago. The only reason I'm thinking about this now is since we know Cafe is coming and there's been loads of hints for Warhammer 3 about other things, which they'll likely make miniatures of. Keep in mind that, like, there was a book made for Cafe, this was confirmed, so if new races do end up getting made for any aspect, then they have to make a book. They will likely go, well, we've got the book, we might as well make the miniatures, you know what I mean? So I'm coming in with an edit here, and I've had some time to think, and I think this might be a good way for Games Workshop to introduce the Dogs of War, but also each of the individual factions as their own thing. So think about it this way, a brand new Dogs of War army book. Yes, I'm kind of contradicting myself, but hear me out. A Dogs of War army book which introduces TILEA, ESTALLIA, ARABY, all the usual stuff once again, kind of mixed up like the original 5th edition one, but then in the future, as time progresses, think about it as then expansions, supplements. Think about it this way, like the Space Marines, where you have the baseline Space Marine Codex, and then you have a Codex supplement for pretty much all the established legions to make them more unique and so on. But in this way, it could be adding in extra units, it could be adding in some new characters and all that, just to give you a proper feel. So you can either play as Dogs of War, or if you want, well, I want to play full ESTALLIA, or I want to play full TILEA. Eventually that would happen many years down the line. Well, I'm saying many years down the line because that's pretty much how Games Workshop usually works. This way, the old guard gets their old style faction, but you can also open it up to a majority of new players too. I guess that kind of makes sense when you look at it, like, we've had armies come out and not full armies in one go. The perfect example of this would be the Lumineth for Age of Sigmar, which had a book and then a large amount of miniatures. Then another book came out with some new minis, and we know that there's still another round of Lumineth on the way. So I'm coming in with an edit here, and I've had some time to think, and I think this might be a good way for Games Workshop to introduce the Dogs of War, but also each of the individual factions as their own thing. So think about it this way, a brand new Dogs of War army book. Yes, I'm kind of contradicting myself, but hear me out. A Dogs of War army book which introduces TILEA, ESTALLIA, ARABY, all the usual stuff once again, kind of mixed up like the original 5th edition one, but then in the future, as time progresses, think about it as then expansions, supplements. Think about it this way, like the Space Marines where you have the baseline Space Marine Codex, and then you have a Codex supplement for pretty much all the established legions to make them more unique and so on. But in this way, it could be adding in extra units, it could be adding in some new characters and all that, just to give you a proper feel. So you can either play as Dogs of War, or if you want, well, I want to play full ESTALLIA, or I want to play full TILEA. Eventually that would happen many years down the line. Well, I'm saying many years down the line because that's pretty much how Games Workshop usually works. This way, the old guard gets their old style faction, but you can also open it up to a majority of new players too. I guess that kind of makes sense when you look at it like we've had armies come out and not full armies in one go. The perfect example of this would be the Lumineth for Age of Sigmar, which had a book and then a large amount of miniatures. Then another book came out with some new minis, and we know that there's still another round of Lumineth on the way. So if Games Workshop have done that once, it's very possible that they can do it again. In the case of Warhammer 3, as I probably imagine that a few people who aren't too well versed with Games Workshop are getting kind of confused. How this could essentially work for Warhammer 3 is a Dogs of War race pack with, say, 4 legendary lords, a Sartosan, a TILEA, an Estallian, and an Arabian. It could literally be anyone, I'm just using this as an example. And then mini race packs as expansion race packs. So say, for example, that we do get a Estallian. Right, so that Estallian is in the Dogs of War. The Dogs of War race pack itself would likely have a few Estallian style troops, and then a future DLC adding in maybe 1 or 2 different Estallian characters would then bring in the rest of the roster. A new form of DLC, as you will, minor race packs in a sense, which could work out really, really well, as that would flesh out the game a lot more, and it would get rid of all the silly Empire clones that we're seeing throughout the Warhammer Fantasy world at the moment. Let's be honest, eventually they're going to run out of Lord Pack ideas, because most of the factions are getting near enough complete. I know people don't like hearing that, but yeah, the source material is running out, barring just characters, and I don't think character packs will be sold for a decent amount of money if they just do, say, just 2 free legendary lords. So if they want to kind of milk this, imagine getting TILEA, ESTALLIA, ARABY, SARTOSA, Albion, just all these different possible races and factions as its own minor pack. A lot of people don't want a lot of different human nations, but look, let's be honest, the Warhammer Fantasy world is full of human nations, and this would kind of add to extra bits. I don't know, it's something that's been in my mind for a while that could work for both Warhammer 3 and the old world. It's something that I would like for both, because that means more playable stuff for both formats, and hey, what's wrong with that? But I've been thinking about the races as its own separate entity. I've been looking at possible ways on how the lore could be changed. There will be some follow-up videos to this. I just really want to sit down and talk to some people about it and see what they could think, maybe do some collaborations. We'll see how this goes. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and let's start a bit of a discussion. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince, and Okro for subscribing to us at our Fane level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman, and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our King level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing, and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel's been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.